Sup, Manuelliam? I send you another missive upon the YouTubes. This is, this one's longer than the last one just because it took me longer to draw it, and I don't really want to speed up the painting past, I believe it's at 5 times speed right now, so we're already, but it's still 30 minutes even with that, so just settle in and grab a snack, I guess. Nothing I can do. Yeah, last one was faster because I already had a sketch that I was working off of, whereas for this one, I actually deleted the first 2 tries because I didn't like them. So this is actually the shorter version. I believe in real time it's about, well, I guess it's whatever 36 times 5 is. So this is still the same scene as last time that I was trying to draw. This is actually take 3 on me trying to draw a specific place from a fanfic, actually. That is, you can see, if you see me flipping to a pixel art image, that's take 1 that I did not record because that was before I was doing this whole bit. Oh, by the way, I fixed up the audio a little bit. Let me know if it actually works out. But, yeah. This is from a Naruto fanfic, actually. I still remain utterly uninterested in Naruto the show, and I've continued to not have watched it, but the fandom is oddly compelling to me, so the first step is admitting you have a problem. And like, so this is the depiction of Azushio Kagure, which I think I probably mangled, but in a fic by, I want to say Black Cat or something, that like, I'm gonna be real, I didn't like the fic that much, TBH, but like, it just had such a like, evocative description of this place, which is like, in Naruto canon, I believe, Whirlpool Village is like, destroyed, and as far as I know is not rebuilt, but in the fic Naruto goes and like rebuilds his home place, that's not the right birthplace, there we go. But yeah, he goes and restores it, as well as like he has memories of how it was like before it fell due to plot contrivances. And like, I don't know, there was something compelling about the description. It really nailed a sense of place that is like hard to get in a lot of text or in any medium, really. But yeah, the description within the text itself is that Uzushio Gakure is like on the sea, it's on the coast, and all the buildings have like very distinctive red rooftops and everything's in white and gold. It's a very like, it evokes a sense of like sun-soaked welcome in the text that is, I'm quite charmed by, and I keep trying to capture here. I think my first attempt was probably the best vis-a-vis just like capturing the actual details of like red and white and yellow, but it was also pixel art, which like, nothing against pixel art, I like pixel art, but I do think it is kind of cheating a bit when I'm trying to get better at drawing architecture, since like it just simplifies what you need to draw in a very specific way. Hence take 2 with the previous speed paint, which I like that one the best holistically as a piece of art. I think like I like the silhouette that it ended up with, but just it completely lost the color scheme of Whirlpool Village, which is pretty important. So this is now on to take 3, where I try to combine the previous 2. Still not entirely happy with it, but also I don't want to keep working on this one image. So I'll probably move on after this. The style specifically is like kind of in the territory of Disco Elysium, just because I like that painterly style for this kind of landscape. And also I just read through the art book recently. It's got that section on it's got a section where the artist talks about like edge hierarchy, which is put it onto my radar as a thing I'm thinking about now in my art, of like, basically the idea is that like you don't have to draw out every line as a hard edge. For example, like between a wall and a floor, you don't have to delineate the two super distinctly, because you can't just let that sort of like border fade away into shadow, because you know that's how light works really. And like, I don't know, I was like, you know what, that's a good point. Like that is something to keep in mind. And so here, like, I don't think you can see it yet, but I'm trying to get a little softer with like the edges on the bottoms of the clouds and sort of the shadow inside the little buildings. Again, still not entirely happy with it. I think one of these days I'll get better at architecture as I keep drawing it, but I will have to keep drawing it for a bit first. Later you'll see me doing the Disco Elysium thing of just like tossing brush strokes of color around the canvas. The artist was just like, yeah, you know, like sometimes you just need a splotch of blue over there to balance it out. And I'm like, you know what, good point. Like there's nothing blue over there, but sure, you can just put a splotch of blue over there. No one can stop you. But yeah, like I got really into trying to draw this just because like I couldn't usually I like to save like evocative imagery into my little quote book, you know, that has like, you know, the quote book for quotes, Cusco's poison, poison for Cusco. But like this fic was one of those examples of just like there wasn't any specific line I could pull out of it that had like good imagery or like particularly exquisite diction, and it was just like kind of scattershot over several chapters in a way that's just like there's not a good way to catch it into one quote and put it in my book, so I'm trying to do it in art instead, but I'm keep not quite doing it. Man, speaking of things I can't get into my quote book, there's a specific scene from a Homestuck fanfic that I've been kind of obsessed with that like I just there's no real way to encapsulate it in a singular quote to stick into my collection, even though I keep trying. In fact, let me just pull it up because I've got to burn 30 minutes anyway. Sorry, Manuelliam, you're dragged along for this ride. It's a fic called Strider's Edge that's got a very strange concept. A lot of Homestuck fanfics have weird off-the-wall premises. I suspect because Homestuck itself is already so weird that like authors just kind of go hog wild on it. But yeah, this is it actually took me 3 tries to get into this, because the first time I just bounced off of it entirely. It's a fic where like all of the characters are in an AU where they all went to Oxford instead. It's not quite a college AU because it's still quite like dramatic and like, you know, people die and stuff. It is still got like, it's not just a slice of life without any stakes, but it is like it's written in such a strange voice that like, that's why I stopped reading it the second time, because I was writing my own fanfic at the time and for In Stars and Time, and like I realized that like the voice was getting into my head, and my own narration was starting to sound weird and British for no reason, and I'm like, okay, I gotta stop reading this until after I finish my writing. And the third time I read it all the way through, and I was like, I didn't like all of it or every aspect of it, but it was there were parts of it where I almost cried, you know? So like there was something compelling about it, strangely. But yeah, like the characters are all kind of weird and out of character because they've been pulled out of the original context, but they're still like really interesting and sort of recognizably themselves in their own way. And there's a moment, like, really pretty late in the game of the story. There's been, like, multiple murders already. And, like, so the main character is John. Everything's from his point of view. It's actually in first person, which is relatively rare for a fanfic, but manages to pull it off pretty well. And, there's one of the other characters, Trezzy, has been murdered by Eridan due to various plot reasons, that the story's been building up. And John knows that Eridan's the one who killed her, but he's been blackmailed into silence, and the rest of their friends don't know yet. So they like hold this funeral for her, and it's like surprisingly affecting, honestly. And like sort of a minor motif throughout the story is poetry, and like there's 2 poems read at this little impromptu funeral, both of which I was quite taken by. First off is here, I'll just read out the passage. Rose got up next and read a poem. I thought she might go for some standard bit of elegiac funeral fare, but in fact she had chosen George Barker's Summer Song 1, a weird, vivid, angular poem full of stumbles in the meter that catch a listener off guard like a sharp grey elbow to the ribs. She read it beautifully. And then it has the poem itself transcribed, which... I was like, when I read this, I was like, that's a weird way to describe a poem. And then I read the poem, I'm like, actually, no, you nailed it. That is exactly what that poem is. So I'll read it here. Great summer sun, turn back to the designer. I would not be the one to start the breaking day and the breaking heart for all the grief in China. My one, my only love, hide your face in a leaf, and let the hot tear falling burn the stupid heart that will not learn the everywhere of grief. Great summer sun, turn back to the never never, cloud cuckoo, happy far off land, where all the love is true love, and true love goes on forever. I was like, I don't know if it really comes through in the verbal reading, but like on the page at least, it really does, the lines break at places that you wouldn't really expect, and the rhyme scheme feels like it's trying to trip you on purpose. It keeps breaking itself strangely, and like, I don't know, I don't know if I like the poem, but it is certainly in my head now, you know? And the second, like, really great poetic trick that it pulls is, Dave, Trezzy's then boyfriend in this fic, gives also a recitation of a poem, and he recites the Iroha, which is a Japanese poem. It's a mnemonic for the Japanese syllabary, where, like, it's a pangram, so every syllable, it contains every syllable of the Japanese, like, alphabet's the wrong, I get syllabary is the word. And, like, it is Trezzy's favorite poem in the story. As she describes it, it codifies a system, a set of rules, and at the same time it says something true, and it's beautiful. What more could you possibly want from a poem? And so, like, this is actually a pretty specific version and translation of this poem that this fic uses. So, excuse my shite Japanese pronunciation for a moment, but, Iroha ni hohato chili nuru wo, wakayo tareso tsune naramu. Yui no okunama kefu koete, asaki yume mishi wehi mo sezu. And the translation it gives is, colors, though fragrant, pass like flowers. Who in this world will remain unchanged? If today we cross over the deep mountains of transient reality, we shall no longer see meaningless dreams, nor be intoxicated. I was like, honestly, an oddly compelling poem. But the real trick is in the next chapter, later, Aridin the murderer disappears mysteriously, which John's pretty worried about because, you know, he's being blackmailed about murder. And so he goes to talk to Dave about it, and they mentioned that, like, you know, oh, I liked your reading at the funeral, at which point Dave reveals that there is a secret in the poem. There's a secret message. I have to scroll. I have to flip to the next chapter and scroll, so give me a second. Yes, so if you read it in the original Japanese and you take the last syllable in each line, you get an extra sentence. Toga nakute shisu. It means die without wrongdoing. And there's just this lull in the conversation, and then John is just like, so what did you do with the body? And, like, I really love this moment of just, like, the setup with the poem at the eulogy, at the funeral, and then hear the reveal of like, I didn't even, like, this is just, I didn't know you could stick a secret message in a poem like that, you know? And also just the, like, this moment of just like, oh, you fucking killed him, huh? Die without wrongdoing. Like, you don't, like, John doesn't even say it directly, just like, he and the reader just like know instantly off the bat of just like, oh, so that's why you disappeared. I see what happened here. We're fucked. And it's like, I don't know, it's very, I am charmed by it. I am enamored by this moment. Again, though, it's like, I've spent the past couple of days trying to figure out if, like, is there a way for me to excise this into a quote, but there simply is not. Yes, I am a nerd who thinks about that in my spare time. Yeah, there's, like, honestly, there's a lot of poetry that doesn't make it into my quote book, even though poetry is technically probably the form of text most concerned with diction, just because, like, if I like a poem, I probably like the entire poem, and I don't really have the physical notebook space to copy out an entire poem, to my disappointment, because I don't like it when quotes go past one page on my book. Like right now, I'm quite fond of one that's Bone Dog by Eva HD. It's like such a... Here, I'll read you the first two stanzas. Coming home is terrible, whether the dogs lick your face or not, whether you have a wife or just a wife-shaped loneliness waiting for you. Coming home is terribly lonely, so that you think of the oppressive barometric pressure back where you've just come from with fondness, because everything's worse once you're home. You think of the vermin clinging to grass stalks, long hours on the road, roadside assistance and ice creams, the peculiar shapes of certain clouds and silences, with longing, because you did not want to return. Coming home is just awful. And the rest of the poem is just like entirely like that, and it's just like, it's such a vindictive and like horrid little poem, you know, like parentheses affectionate, but just like, I don't know, I'm quite charmed by it, just like, by just how like unhappy and spiteful it is. But there's not really a good line to pull out of it, because it's all, you know, it's all taken together. And I usually, my personal rule of thumb for quotes in my quote books, that like, I want them to be freestanding. I want, like, the reason that they aren't cited with any sources is like, well, first off, I can't be bothered. Second off, like, I know where it comes from, and like, no one else is looking at this book, so like, I don't really see the need to have that information on the page. I can just, they're the quotes that I found. I know where they came from. I'm the one who wrote them down. But thirdly, like, on the conceptual level, like, most of these quotes are in here because I like the specific diction of a line or the imagery, and I don't actually want you to think about like where it came from or its greater context. That's why like I'll also like sometimes I'll omit the character name too, just because like I don't want you to get distracted by the characterization or the plot or what's happening. I want you to just look at this line on its own in this moment in front of you, you know? On its own merits. Alright, there's still 15 minutes on the clock, so I'm gonna... Let's see if I, you know, let me see if there's any good quotes in my book recently, actually. Oh, here's another one. Also, this one's also from another Homestuck fic, though. One I did not like as much, so this is the only line I, liked enough to pull out of it. There's so much wrong with his voice. It's clear and pure as blue crystal, an April birthstone. If you held it up to the sun, it would throw dancing spots of color on your wall. It has no cracks, no veins. That's like, what a lovely metaphor for a voice. That if you held this voice up to the sun, it would throw dancing spots of color on your wall. What imagery? It's almost incorrect. It is almost nonsensical, which of course are my favorite kinds of metaphors. Like, it doesn't try to describe the pitch or tone of the voice, which is like, that's very difficult to convey over text anyway. You would get much more mileage out of just like having a vocal performance. So instead the author like doesn't even try. Instead they try to describe this attribute, this much more intangible attribute of innocence, that this is a character who has not yet been broken by the world, which is just like, that's just good use of medium, you know? Like, I will say an April birthstone is diamond, and you'd really think from blue crystal that it should be a sapphire, which I believe is the September birthstone, so I am going to dock it 5 points for CinemaSin style inaccuracy. I mean, I'll give it back 3 points just because, like, diamond does work with the metaphor of, like, it has the qualities of, like, clearness and unbreakability and, like, can be blue, you know? But also, like, dock it back down too because, like, the quality invoked actually is not unbreakability, but the fact that it has not yet been broken, which is a small but very meaningful difference. Well, I guess you could give it back one because April is thematically important to this character. Hi, I'm an English major. This is what I do in my fucking spare time. But yeah, like, I have to admit, Manuelliam, I am in fact a nerd. Unfortunately, like, the other day someone left a comment on my fucking fanfiction that was like, hey, you used the word limbed, fellow enjoyer of the word limb, and I was like, fuck yeah, fellow enjoyer of the word limbed, like, because unironically, yes, I really like the word limbed, and that's why I used it. I'm like, oh. You know what? I am dying on this hill, actually. More people should use the word limbed. It's a good word. L-I-M-N, or in this case, L-I-M-N-E-D. It means to, like, to be aligned, usually with light, or, to, like, depict with words or imagery. It's coming from the same root as, like, illuminate, so that's kind of vibe here. I don't know, it's a lovely word to me. More people should use it. Think about diction. Anyways. That's most of the things in this quote book, stuff where it's like, I like the exact word choice, or, ooh, here's one that's, I was quite taken by. It's from a Disco Elysium fic that is, I believe, incomplete. He pauses for 32.5 seconds, weighing his heart like a jackal. Finding it heavier than a feather, Kim grabs his keys from his desk drawer and marches from the office. And just like, the precision of time, 32.5 seconds, it's like, and again, that's like, you wouldn't really be able to do that in a different medium because, like, you know, your audience probably isn't counting the exact seconds, and like, the symbolism of, the allusion to Anubis and the Egyptian underworld, weighing your heart against the feather of truth with, like, what's the name of the heart eater again? Like, Amoret or something? But, like, you know, invoking that for this moment of judgment is, like, that's just a lovely little slice of writing, you know? Oh, here's one that I really like from Disco Elysium, actually. Not the fanfic, just the regular game. It's the solution to one of the thought projects. The kingdom of conscience will be exactly as it is now. Moralists don't really have beliefs. Sometimes they stumble on one, like a child's toy left on the carpet. The toy must be put away immediately, and the child reprimanded. Centrism isn't change, not even incremental change. It is control over yourself and the world. Exercise it. Look up at the sky, at the dark shapes of coalition airships hanging there. Ask yourself, is there something sinister in moralism? And then answer, no. God is in his heaven. Everything is normal on earth. And just like, first of all, scathing critique of centrism. as is par for the course for disco. But also, like, that last part, zooming in on the last couple lines, ask yourself, is there something sinister in moralism? And then answer no. Like, I love that structure of, the way it sets you up, like it's going to give you a rhetorical question, only to then immediately answer it in the text itself, just like it dictates your answer for you. It is, indeed, about control. It just gives such a, like, a subtle little kick to that passage, you know? The, like, you don't really notice it, but the text has sort of yanked the steering wheels out of your hand without even thinking about it, and that's made its way into my own writing as well. Not the exact line, because I have not written that Disco Elysium fic yet, but, like, the structure of, like, setting up a question and then answering it for the reader. Oh, there's still 6 minutes left on the clock. I will continue rambling about quotes. Let's see what else I got in here. Oh, here's an older one. This is from a, well, I'll read it out first. He is petty and madly whimsical. Some strange alertness flitters around him, but perhaps it's just the lights dancing off the jewels. Now this one, I believe this one's from a Hamilton fic, and it's describing King George. I don't remember if it was a good fic anymore, but this line has been stuck in my head for years, just because, like, even now, whenever I describe a character who's in, like, an altered state of mind of some sort, I find myself writing about, like, the quality of light carried in the air around them because of this line. Like, this is just ingrained into my brain as, like, the way to describe, like, that sense of delirium. The skeleton of it continues to live in my own writing nowadays. Honestly, like, if you, Manuel, read through my AO3 account, I think, like, there would be enough lines in there that you would be like, oh, this is definitely something written by Quill. Like, there's a couple references to stuff. There's a few bits actually from Songs in the Dusk that, like, made it in. It's not my quote book because, like, it's not long enough, but, like, Red Eyes Shining is, like, a phrase I'm quite enamored by. Or, like, the use of the word sunder. I'm just fond of the word sunder as well. But yeah, it's like, this is also, I don't know if Jenna's listening in, but, like, if she is, this is also why I don't like discussing text without having it in front of me, just like, because this is the way I think about writing. On top of, like, the overarching structure of a plot, also, like, the exact specifics of, like, exactly which words did you use and in what order. That is important to me, hence I don't like badly paraphrasing or misquoting something, because, you know, this is the stuff I'm interested in, and this is the stuff I think about a lot. This is also why I take such a fine-toothed comb to my own writing, because, like, if there's a typo in there, it irritates me so much, because, like, I am thinking about the exact word choice of this sentence, and if there's a typo in there where I accidentally put the same word twice, or I put the wrong word, it's just like, no, it's been thrown off, I think the funniest quote in here, not like, well, there's a lot of quotes in here that are just like, I thought it was a good joke, but the weirdest source is probably, ooh, let me pull it up. This one. Hiking out beyond town on another warm and marble-round day, the sky blue blown glass reaching high, the creeks bright with mirror waters fanning over white stones. It was a day as perfect as the flame of a candle. Which just, like, that's just a lovely little piece of imagery, but it's from a fucking, like, I think, like, either AP or SAT test, where I was just straight up taking the test, and I was like, oh, actually, this passage is really good. So I just memorized the, it was a day as perfect as the flame of a candle, and googled it when I got home, and it's, I believe it's Bradbury. So that's probably the weirdest, source for a quote in my book. SAT test reading section. And, like, again, it's landed in my own work as, like, occasionally I'll describe weather or day as like as perfect as, and then some like strange metaphor. There's also stuff in here that I just thought was funny, like the next line beneath it is, "How can you trust the man who wears both a belt and suspenders? The man can't even trust his own pants." And it's like, shit, man, you're right. You got a point. Man, I need to get back into my own writing. I'm just not very good at thinking about plot. I can do it, but it doesn't come naturally to me. Whenever I write outlines, it's like slamming my head against the wall repeatedly. As you can see, I'm much more interested in world building and the specifics of word choice, so plot turns into something that comes together as I write, not something that I have before I write, which is bad, because before I write is when I need to know what the plot is. For the Worm My Hero crossover fic that I want to work on, like, I don't really want to reread Worm, is the thing that I'm realizing. Because, like, it also has the sequel Ward that I started reading but never got very far into and eventually just kind of gave up on, because I think Wildbow has a real problem with well, I guess it's not a problem per se, it's more of it's not to my personal taste, where a lot of their work is very dark in a way that is, like, boring to me. It is monotonous. Like, it's fine, I'm fine with works that are grim and stuff, in fact, I think that's pretty interesting, but I had this problem the most with Pact, which I really like the world building for that universe, but the story was just so singularly depressing. Everything that happened to the characters was bad, and everything was always getting worse, and if things were getting better, it was to make them get worse even more later, you know, like, there was no variation in tone, there was no contrast there, which I think is really important, especially if you're telling a depressing story. Like, there's a moment in the Pandora Hearts manga, actually, that, like, it's been too long since I've read it for me to really speak of it in detail or with knowledge, but the lasting impression it made upon me was that sort of in the final legs of its story, everything's really going to shit at that point. It's all bad. But right before the cusp of the worst of it, all the characters get together and they just have like a nice little hangout. They have I believe a picnic, and like they take a photograph, and it's just this sort of isolated moment of sunlight before everything goes horribly wrong at the end. People die, and I think people die, at least. It's been a very long time since I've read it, middle school probably. To me, that bright contrasting moment of everything is okay against the rest of the darkness is what makes that entire story work for me. It provides the necessary difference that lets you actually feel the emotional depth there. And of course, after everything is over, someone pulls out the photograph and looks back and remembers of like, ah, fuck, man, things used to be okay. And I remember at the time it was an oddly affecting moment for me. It was just, shit, man. And so now, frequently, whenever I read things, I'll be like, oh, you guys need to have a picnic and take a photograph so that you can look upon it later and be like, you know, nostalgic and tragic about it. And also to contrast the present horror against something that makes it even worse, you know? Like, not to get fucking dramatic about it on main, but like, if you want really dark shadows, you've got to cast a very bright light. And Ward and Worm, and especially Pact, I think singularly fails at that. It is just all darkness in a way that becomes unreadable. Like, there is no variation here to make anything out. credit where it's due. I do think Worm has the least bad of the works of Wildbow that I've read with this issue, but still though, it's all just hella long. So like for My Hero, you know, I actually watched season 5 and 6 before I plan to do this fanfic, but I don't think I'll do the same for Worm. As much as I like it, as much as I think it is better than My Hero, it's like, it doesn't really have that same, like, I guess replayability to it that My Hero does, or like the accessibility of I could just put on a show in the background, whereas reading is a bit more involved. But yeah. Oh, I believe that takes us to the end, so yeah, thanks for hanging with Quill's impromptu English major corner. And I'll catch you next time.